that could make it more publicly visible, and we wanted to make you aware of this. Andy Kendall and Norm Cahill, we want to talk about an issue of methane gas at Valley and work that we're doing to control methane. It has to do with a program that some of Nancy's folks have been involved in from Corporate Environmental, and recently there was a study through JPL that they notified us that they had identified methane, but it actually goes hand in hand with something we're working on. So I want to make sure the board was aware of this. So,
good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to ask Norm Cahill to brief you. Just for Norm, Norm is the Assistant Director for the Power Supply Operations Group up until 2 days ago, and Norm is now the Director. Tyrone Jeffrey of that division is retiring October 1st. So as of yesterday, Norm has been appointed as his succession plan as the new Director for Power Supply Operations. So I want to congratulate Norm Cahill. And so briefly, JPL in conjunction with NASA has a program where they fly drones around the city and map the whole city, refineries in different places. They notified us over the weekend or Friday that during their flyover of our Valley generation statement, they noticed methane. And so this is an issue that we knew about and have ordered parts to repair, and Norm will give you a quick briefing.
Yes, good morning, board members. So we were given the report on Friday, and just we were aware of the leak, and the leak is coming from some natural gas compressors. Basically, it compresses natural gas to a high pressure that we use to feed our Valley generating units. We actually participated in a different study in September of last year with EPRI, and they also used drones and some handheld FLIR infrared cameras to go through the entire plant and to identify other leaks. We were given the report from EPRI, and we learned the extent of the leaks of March of this year, right before all of the COVID pandemic took off. But prior to even doing the study in September of last year, we had already planned to make repairs of the compressor units. That type and that style of compressor has a tendency to leak. So we've been mindful of it. In fact, we rebuilt the compressor units back in 2015. But we have been monitoring it, and we saw a steady increase in leaks. So the plan was, this last fall, was to order a new design that would make the compressor parts more reliable and less tendency to leak. Unfortunately, due to other work going on at Valley that we needed to get done during our SR, our scheduled inspection repairs to units, that work had needed to be deferred until this upcoming November. One of the challenges we have there is that if we took the compressors offline, that basically would make the units unavailable to the power system. So typically we try to do that in the fall, but the other challenge has been coordinating the plant outages with the transmission upgrades, because a lot of times we need to have the units on in order to make transmission upgrades in order to help sustain our renewable portfolio. So with all that being said, we were aware of the leaks. We've been monitoring it to make sure they haven't increased. We are scheduled to receive brand new designed parts in October. The schedule to take the units offline and to make the permanent repairs is for November. So it's going to be rebuilt and redesigned, and that is the plan. We do have some parts available that if the leaks are to increase, we would try to take an unscheduled outage whenever the weather gets cool enough that we can take some units offline, and for a short, just to make some temp repairs. But that is the plan right now, and I'm here to answer any questions you would have.
I'm sorry, I won't go first. Commissioner Reyes.
How much methane has leaked?
It's typically, we found it's 10,606 standard cubic feet per hour. So
that has been leaking since when?
It's been leaking for the last couple of years. We just found out this amount since September. That's when we did the study with EPRI. We didn't have a monitoring system to to detect how much was leaking until we teamed up with EPRI to find out where the leaks are and how much are coming out of the compressor.
Shouldn't we have a standard monitoring equipment for that every time we have natural gas and we have the compressors because we know that it's going to leak?
That's what we're working on. It's not the standard in both the natural gas industry or at the plants to actually have it on the compressors because they inherently leak. We discovered a couple years ago, and even before that, we look at it and we check it out. Our engineering staff at the plant will review it, and then we do make repairs as quickly as we can. The point is that once we discover the problem, it's trying to schedule when to take the compressors offline and make the plant unavailable. And that's always been the challenge.
Are there any questions from other commissioners? Okay, I have a couple. So you say we have always known this. Who is we? Because I didn't know it until this moment.
I'm sorry, it was the plant management and the division management, and also the environmental group has been told about it numerous occasions about the amount of leaks because we are permitted by AQMD and any emissions that come from the plant. So it is tracked.
And are there specific thresholds with respect to emissions that we're required to stay below?
Yes.
And have we exceeded those thresholds?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Yeah.
Are we monitoring to ensure that we do not?
Yes, we have an environmental specialist that is at every plant and monitors all the emissions, including the CO2 coming out of the units.
And where exactly, whose district does this plant reside in?
Well, it's in Sunland, so I believe
It's in Council District 6.
yes.
District 6. And is there any, how would members of the public become aware of methane leaks in their area?
I believe the department would probably put out an announcement.
I believe, and I'll defer to Nancy, she may have information, or maybe Mark Slodgick on her, but we do have air quality data and part of our regular monitoring. And so, what you'll find at any power plant as well, a lot of facilities will be, incidental leaks of methane. And then in this case, and part of that's part of the process, but in this case, we have something that based on the kind of equipment it is, will begin to fail over time. And so we were, and I know heard the environmental group was involved with the study to look at this and to plan the replacement. We're bringing this just for your information today because we were just alerted yesterday by JPL that they had done a flyover and noticed the same thing that we were already working on, but their information is getting more publicized. We want to make sure you understood that this is something we're aware of, have had a plan in place, and are executing that plan. So not that a methane leak is good, I understand, but at the same time, it's not something that we were not aware of and not addressing.
Well, I guess there are a couple of things that concern me about it, and it is both the actual, deterioration of this particular equipment and the resulting increases in methane leaks, but also the potential to erode public confidence in the utility, when people are surprised or blindsided, or when we say, well, we know, then the question is, well, who else knows? And what are we doing to ensure that people both are aware of not just the potential risk, but are aware of what we are doing to mitigate risk? And when you say we have a plan that we know we've had a plan, we're executing, it didn't sound like that. It sounded to me like we know we have a plan, but how we're going to execute it is sort of subject to this, that, and the third thing. So for instance, and I'm not really clear just based on this conversation, what the triggers are in terms of repair. So is this happening in November? Because you indicated fall, so is it happening in November that there will be some scheduled?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is scheduled in November, and the problem we had last September was the availability of the parts was probably the biggest thing because they had to be engineered and designed. So they're to be delivered in October. So we, had this all scheduled for the last few months to work it out with Energy Control Center to let them know that some of the units would not be available possibly when we're doing the work. And we
Okay.
have a contractor already lined up to get the work done.
It would be interesting from my
Nancy,
perspective.
could I add a couple of,
Oh, great.
just a couple of things. First of all, just in terms of context, so the EPRI study that Norm referred to was one that was conducted for the California Energy Commission, because they were precisely for trying to figure out where there were sources of methane around the state, because I think the state did not have a good handle on sort of necessarily where all sources of methane were. The second is also JPL's, the remote sensing equipment also is something that they've been doing in terms of studying where there are potential sources of methane. So there are situations where there are not necessarily the kinds of, all parts of the of industrial facilities are not necessarily regulated until the regulatory bodies determine that there's an issue. In terms of the data, we have continuous emission monitors all over our facilities, and they report to AQMD regularly. So there is a lot of data on where we're supposed to report data, and in some cases, we're all sort of doing this learning together. And as soon as this was identified last year, the decision was made to try to repair that, knowing that that was the source of methane.
Commissioner Reyes?
I just want to express my concern, because I know methane is like 80 times more potent than greenhouse gas emissions, and the communities in that area are actually disadvantaged communities. There are low-income, vulnerable population, and we should learn from the Aliso Canyon leak, right? That whole nightmare of a story. So I want to see a sense of urgency from this department to really work on a plan to mitigate that. And if we could do that mitigation earlier, the sooner the better, because we owe it to our customers, we owe it to the public that we are responsive in situations like this, and it should not be a surprise to us as commissioners as well, so that then we could really take a look at the situation at the Valley. That is a very important district for us, and that there's the public health issue that I'm really connecting this to. So I would like to see that sense of urgency in your mitigation plan. Thank you.
Okay, understood.
Frankly, at our next commission meeting, I'd like a more comprehensive report on this particular item, specifically going to Commissioner Reyes's comments regarding public health impacts. This feels like an alert, but not like an actual data-based report. So if I walk away from this conversation, I don't know if I should be, terrified, or if this is just regular operating procedure. It's no problem. There's a little stuff out there and it's being cleaned up. I would think that if I lived in